The tractor that wouldn't budge. The story of Lucas Hayes and the HOA wore the sharp screech of tires, and a furious woman's voice shattered the early morning calm, dragging me out of a dreamless sleep at a time when only farmers, bakers, and fools were awake. Groggy and still in my pajama bottoms, I stumbled onto the porch to find the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, Brenda McAllister, red-faced and barking into a walkie-talkie. Like a general sending troops into battle point, two burly men in ill-fitting uniforms were struggling to attach tow straps to my pride and joy. A 1950 vintage Oliver 77 tractor, polished until it gleamed under the rising sun. The flatbed truck they brought looked better suited to hauling lawn chairs than a 2-ton beast built when machinery was still made to last. Leaning casually against my porch railing, I sipped my coffee and watched the comedy unfold. It was better entertainment than Saturday morning cartoons. Predictably, the straps snapped within minutes, sending one of Brenda's henchmen sprawling into the same meticulously trimmed hedges Brenda had once fined me for letting grow half an inch too tall. Her shrill voice rose to a fever pitch, and right then and there, I decided. If they wanted to fight over my tractor, they had no idea the storm they had just unleashed. My name's Lucas Hayes, retired mechanical engineer, owner of 4 acres of paradise, stubbornly resisting the homogenization efforts of the Willow Creek HOA. I had moved here seeking peace, room for my orchard, and space to restore the old Oliver that had once belonged to my grandfather. What I hadn't anticipated was that my dream would clash head-on with Brenda's dream of a perfectly manicured Stepford neighborhood. IT started small. Courtesy notices slipped under my door about non-compliant agricultural equipment. Fines followed, which I ignored because my property, annexed long before the HOA formed, wasn't even under their jurisdiction. Facts never slowed Brenda down. In her mind, my tractor was an affront to the holy aesthetic of Willow Creek. She tried everything: intimidation, bogus fines, public shaming at HOA meetings, but I outlasted her at every turn. I even framed the nastiest violation notice and bolted it proudly to the side of my barn. But I hadn't expected outright theft. When I saw them try to tow my tractor, it wasn't anger I felt. It was something colder. Amusement. Pity. The poor fools. While they struggled, I wandered down the gravel path toward the fence, raising my coffee cup in salute. "You boys sure you want to keep pulling on that?" I called out. "Might tear your little truck in half." Brenda spun toward me, face flushed the alarming shade of a ripe tomato. "This is an authorized removal," she screeched. "You're in violation, Lucas. Step aside." I smiled politely. "Actually, Brenda, the county assessor's office would disagree. My property predates the HOA charter by almost half a century, which means right now, you're trespassing." The 2 tow truck drivers exchanged nervous glances. One wiped sweat off his forehead. The other tightened the chain around my tractor's axle and, determined to earn his pay, gave it another go. With a thunderous snap, the chain broke again. The recoil sent a metal whip sailing perilously close to Brenda's designer purse. She let out a shriek and stumbled backward into the flower bed. I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. First to my lawyer, a crusty bulldog named Evelyn Parker, who loved nothing more than grinding petty tyrants into dust. Second to my cousin, Deputy Sheriff Caleb Dixon, who had spent his entire career dealing with HOA nonsense and found it endlessly entertaining. 15 minutes later, Caleb rolled up with lights flashing, not because it was an emergency, but because he loved making an entrance. Brenda charged toward him, spitting words like community standards and visual harmony. Caleb listened patiently, chewing on a toothpick, before calmly asking, "You got a court order, ma'am? A lien? Any legal claim at all?" Brenda's mouth flapped, but no words came out. "No," Caleb drawled. "Well, then you're trespassing and attempting to unlawfully seize private property. Kindly pack it up before I start writing citations." The tow truck drivers didn't wait for a second warning. They unhooked what was left of their straps and peeled out, leaving dust and a very angry Brenda in their wake. As the sun climbed higher, I stood next to my beautiful Oliver, sipping my second cup of coffee, feeling like a king surveying his domain. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Brenda wasn't the quitting type. She was the type who, once embarrassed, would double down in desperation. And sure enough, the very next morning, she escalated. This time, she brought out the big guns. A commercial crane truck and a crew of uniformed workers who looked like they had been promised overtime and hazard pay. Brenda stood triumphant at the gate, arms folded, a wicked gleam in her eye. But she had underestimated me, again. Before the workers could even hook a single chain to my tractor, I walked over, holding up a court order, a temporary restraining injunction signed by a real judge just hours before, prohibiting any removal attempts pending investigation into HOA misconduct. I handed the paper to the crane operator. He barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "Sorry, lady," he told Brenda. "No can do. Court order's a court order." She exploded, shrieking, stamping her feet, threatening to sue everyone within a 5-mile radius. The workers packed up and left, not wanting any part of whatever mess she was brewing. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down now openly laughed. Someone brought out folding chairs. Another set up a grill. Someone even hooked up speakers and blasted Johnny Cash songs into the morning AI. It was no longer just about a tractor. It was about freedom, pride, community. By noon, the story had gone viral online. Videos of Brenda's tantrum flooded social media, complete with hashtags like #TractorJustice and #HOAKaren. Local news vans showed up. Reporters interviewed me by the gate while Caleb looked on, chuckling behind his aviators. Brenda tried one last gambit, forging an emergency removal order on HOA letterhead. But Caleb caught the fake immediately and arrested her for filing false documents. Watching her get loaded into the back of a sheriff's cruiser, still sputtering about bylaws, was the finest moment of my life. In the days that followed, Brenda was stripped of her position. A full audit exposed years of shady dealings, embezzled HOA funds, and abuses of power. Residents voted to disband the HOA altogether, opting instead for voluntary committees. And me, I hosted the first annual Willow Creek Tractor Festival. Hundreds came, neighbors, friends, local farmers. We had barbecue, bluegrass music, tractor rides for the kids, and a raffle benefiting local families. The highlight of the festival was my old Oliver, proudly displayed at the entrance with a hand-painted sign. "This land is free. This tractor is stubborn. Both are here to stay." As fireworks lit up the summer night sky, I leaned against the tractor's fender, sipping a cold beer, watching a community that had once been divided now laughing, dancing, living. Freedom, I realized, wasn't just a legal right. It was something you had to defend, sometimes with stubbornness, sometimes with humor, always with heart. And sometimes it only took one man, one tractor, and a whole lot of grit to remind everyone what mattered most.